Hello, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you being a part of this panel. What our state is trying to do here is narrow down the letters of intent that have come in for the BRIC funding opportunity so that we're only putting forward competitive projects. So we're an enhanced state with FEMA, so they expect us to do this diligence and put forward projects that are going to compete at the national level. So we thank you for being a part of that. So what I'd like to share with you now in a quick briefing is just what the priorities of the funding opportunity are and the scoring criterion that we're going to use in making those determinations. First of all, the BRIC priorities are to, first of all, to mitigate the risk to public infrastructure. So this may very well be an infrastructure project, but is it reducing risk from some sort of natural hazard? The second thing is to incentivize resilient investments in disadvantaged communities, and this all goes back to the new Justice 40 initiative from the Biden administration. These are one and two of the first programs to incorporate that initiative. When what it basically does is designate 40% of federal funds to disadvantaged communities, and we're going to help that to happen by looking for that in our scoring criterion. And we've done an immense outreach into the smaller communities to try to encourage them to apply, and you're going to see that in the outcomes that that we have in the letters of intent. The other is to mitigate risk to one or more of the community lifelines, and those 7 lifelines are at the top of the screen there. We're not going to score based on that because, as you can see, that's a broad-reaching goal, and it would be hard for these projects to not service at least one of those lifelines. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. And then also to incorporate nature-based solutions. Now, I'm going to share with you in the email this document, which is a local guide to nature-based solutions from FEMA. But unless you're just a total geek about those type of things like I am, you do not have to read that, and we're going to brief that in this video to show you what it is we're looking for and what FEMA means by a nature-based solution. They basically weave natural features and processes into a community's landscape through planning, design, and engineering practices, and you're going to see a lot of that in these projects, hopefully, because that's what we're looking for. So the other thing really goes to incentivizing the adoption of the latest building codes. And that one is not something that we're going to score on because the state is what carries that. And we are at a disadvantage this year because they have changed the weighting of that so that only the most recent versions, the 2018 and the 2021 versions of the building codes, are getting the maximum points. We have the 2015 version, and for various reasons, our legislature developed a law that went into effect in 2019 that we can't adopt but every 6 years. And so we will not make a new adoption until 2024. And there's some groups working right now to get that changed, but it is going to affect us, and it puts us behind. So it means that we want to try to make sure we're capturing all of the other points that are available. The one that I skipped second from the top is to enhance the climate resilience and adaptation. And a few of you are on this panel specifically for that. I know you're experts in that realm, and we want to do what we can to make sure that we're taking future conditions and climate change into account in these projects to capture those points. So this document is shared with you. It's the state's scoring criterion. We're not making this up. It comes directly from the FEMA scoring, but we have reduced it a bit because LOIs provide less information, obviously, than the full application. So the first item is looking at it as a public infrastructure project. Does it mitigate risk? We're looking for risk reduction and resiliency. I'm going to share with you this slide. This is directly from FEMA in that criterion, and we're going to score it 1 of 5 levels of points, from not at all to entirely, or from weak to excellent. So you can see that down at the bottom right. There are 4 things that make up this particular criterion, and that is effective risk reduction. Does it increase resiliency? Are there some ancillary benefits? And is it a innovative project? So as you see, they're asking for details about those 4 items. Now in an LOI, we don't have that. So what we're actually looking for is, does it display the potential for? Our briefing does take their LOI and give you 3 examples in each one of these, provide photos, budgets, that sort of thing. But we're just looking at this project to see if it has the potential to be competitive in each one of these categories and scoring them accordingly. This is helpful. This is from FEMA. It's considered a excellent project. It scored maximum points in that criterion last year and won at the national level. So I'm going to give you a moment to pause the video and read those over to the right. All right, so the second one is looking at disadvantaged communities. Are we making resilient investments in disadvantaged communities with these projects? This one ties directly to that Justice 40 initiative. And what I'm going to do here is share with you the definitions, the characterizations that they consider servicing a disadvantaged community, and I'll give you a moment to pause on that. So the next one is incorporating nature-based solutions. This is the one that ties back to that that FEMA document. It's a wide-ranging scoring component here, and what I'll do is sort of brief what comes out of that. The watershed scale includes things like wetland restoration, land conservation from acquisition projects, greenways, stormwater parks, floodplain restoration. A lot of these are going to be involving floodplains. The second one is the neighborhood or site scale. Looking at smaller projects, are they taking hard surfaces and turning them into more permeable surfaces that are going to absorb the rainwater, prevent the runoff, and fix flooding issues? Vegetation swales, green streets, tree trenches, those types of things are what they have in mind for nature-based solutions at a neighborhood scale. And then finally, you'll see quite a few of those, including our first one and the one we'll use in our example today for coastal area scales. This is things like oyster reefs, waterfront parks, dunes, living shorelines. I know we have a few of those projects within these 2 days of review that we'll go over that include living shoreline restorations. So those are nature-based solutions, and we'll be looking for that. And then to what extent does this project enhance climate resilience and adaptation? So this will bring forth some discussion, and we hope it will. These are the things they have in mind with that. It's not only climate change, it can also involve other future conditions like sea level rise and population and demographic changes. So you'll see some of that in the projects that don't really deal directly with climate change, and they can receive full points for taking demographic and population changes, future conditions into account. And I'll give you a moment to look over that slide. Obviously, you'll want to pause because I'm going to keep going. So this is the example that FEMA provides us of an excellent project in that particular scoring criterion. It was also awarded at the national level, and you can take a look at that levee improvement. Next is the community-wide benefits. So this does not mean that it has to involve 100% of the community, but they want you to speak to what portion of the community is impacted by the project, and specifically if there's disadvantaged communities in that project area. So as you can see, FEMA uses an example that is not 100% of the community, is 25% of the community in socio-economic ways. So you can take a look at that slide as well as an example of what they consider an excellent project for population impacted. So it's not so much, is it 100% of the community, but is the population clearly defined in the LOI and ultimately in the application? And then the use of partnerships. This one's going to be easy. Some people don't have any, some people do. Maybe they have them and they haven't mentioned them, but we have to score them on what they've provided. This will be briefed to you and shared in the PowerPoint, and I'll show you an example of that PowerPoint here in just a moment. And here's the slide from FEMA that shows a project that really did a good job of including partnerships. It does not mean they have to be funding partners. They can just be a part of the planning, the decision making, coordinating with state agencies, that sort of thing. And then the final criterion that we'll be looking at is just for overmatch points, and we're going to have that pre-filled out. It's a yes or no. Did they offer more than the minimum that was required to get those? That's what your scoring sheet is going to look like. The very first one that we'll look at, and we're going to show you that as an example, is the Department of Cultural Resources with a project out of Brunswick County. But in that scoring sheet, you're just going to circle your scores. We'll take care of the totaling. And in fact, just to look behind the curtain, what we're going to do is provide two different lists to department leadership. One is a truncated mean list, which we're going to throw out the low and the high score, which helps to get rid of any conflicts of interest or just someone who scored low across the board, and come up with an average of a truncated mean for that. And then the other one is to remove all Department of Public Safety staff from the panel and see if that score comes out to be any different. And we'll provide both of those lists to leadership and determine which one we're going to go with. We did the same thing last year. They did not change a lot, but some. So here's an example of your briefing from Monday. 100, not 135 of these, because we are going to trim that down a bit, but I suspect 100 of them. We'll probably have 50 each day, 50 to 60. We'll just see how it rolls with 7 minutes apiece. So your briefing will look like this project comes out of Brunswick County. They're seeking $4.7 million for a $9.1 million project, a bit of an overmatch there, to install a reef maker artificial shoreline to mitigate erosion and flooding at the Brunswick Town Fort Anderson shoreline. This is from the Department of Cultural Resources. The problem they're having is that the historic fort, which by the way is on the National Historic Registry, it's a tourism attraction and it's losing salt marsh due to storms and passing ship traffic. It's resulting in a habitat loss and species population decline. And that accelerated loss is causing problems with their buried artifacts and exposing some Civil War era batteries, causing a problem there. And so what they're wanting to do is to install that reef maker artificial shoreline. It's not a new project to our coastline. It's been happening quite a while. It's a nature-based solution, 5 feet of concrete molded trays set in natural granite and limestone rock, extending 2 feet above the mean high water elevation line. This, by the way, is a 5-phase project. This is the 5th phase of it. There shows you who has paid for the first 4 phases of the project, this being the last phase, with in-kind support from these agencies and universities. And then finally, as we take a look inside that LOI at Nature-Based Solutions, we talked about the fact that they're using oyster shell embedding. It does have a stabilization using a native cordgrass material and ecosystem-friendly design features. It's community benefit. What they offer for that is that it's a tourism-related project reaching far beyond their population, and that the project is located in Brunswick County, which is a Tier 2 county. So then we'll open the floor for comments and discussion. One thing I want to point out to you is that at this time, the department's engineers, the one specifically who briefed this project, will be available to answer questions. He'll have EM grants open and let you know, or be able to answer your questions. A lot of them will come from the attachments. and they'll be able to open those and show you any flood maps like this here, anything that might help you in making your score. And that's it. Feel free to go back and take a look at this video. I know I threw a lot of information at you fast. We're going to get on a roll with this on Monday morning. And I wanted to share this with you. Last year, what it looked like is we started with 66 LOIs. We narrowed that down to 33 that were invited for full applications. And then as you can see, we were awarded 6 projects. One of those was from our state allocation, and the other 5 were awarded nationally. We were number 1. We received more projects than any other state. And we're proud of that. And I think that this process plays a big part in that competitiveness. So we thank you for being a part of it. If you have any questions, please email me. We'll start at 9 a.m. on Monday, and I will send you the link to the virtual meeting. Thanks again.